That's just the high and low of it. But, you know, I just got to tell you, listening to all of these comments of Nancy Pelosi, it just filled my heart with joy. Joy for the exuberance of knowing that she really thought that Joe Biden was such an extraordinary president that he ought to be up on Mount Rushmore.
The media is fawning over Governor Tim Walz's speech at the DNC and took note of a different kind of energy in the crowd.
What's really been fascinating is to watch the men of the Democratic Party model a kind of masculinity that is simply 21st century masculinity.
He is a political professional. He is a very deft political communicator. And that was a 10 out of 10 effective speech.
There's a distinction between what I would call a cheaper patriotism and a deeper patriotism. There's a deeper patriotism here. It's not just the rah-rah stuff.
It's okay in 2024 to be a man comfortable in his own skin who supports a woman.
Fox News contributor Joe Concha says this was an attack on what Democrats and their allies in the media call toxic masculinity.
Because they also are beta males and whatever you would call a female that doesn't embrace men who are just being men, right? I mean, it's just everything about this convention is just so weird, guys, in general. Obviously, the media coverage just continues to debase themselves as if there's anything left to debase at this point. J.D. Vance joined the Marines as well, which apparently, I guess, is also a very toxic masculine thing, unlike Tim Walz, who ditched his unit before they were deployed. And again, the DNC's introductory video last night, guys, for Tim Walz also said that he was a command sergeant major in the National Guard. That is a lie.
Companies continue to use insulated profanity in television advertisements. Bronson Woodruff reports on one of the latest.
Amazon has jumped on the bandwagon of insinuated profanities in ads in an apparent attempt to sound catchy or funny. A recent ad features a little boy saying an exclamatory phrase. It has no foul words, but it's obvious there is a strong foul word implied. Monica Cole is director of 1 Million Moms.
And we know what they're implying, and the insinuated profanity is completely unacceptable because we know children repeat what they hear.
Her team is asking the public to take action.
1 Million Moms is asking our supporters to sign our online petition urging that Amazon remove this commercial.
1 Million Moms points out this ad airs during prime time when young viewers are more likely to watch. The ad on YouTube also has comments turned off. 1 Million Moms suspects this is because there are others who also find this ad offensive.
Canadian government officials are meeting urgently after both of Canada's major freight railroads came to a full stop because of a contract dispute with their workers. The impasse could bring significant economic harm to businesses and consumers in Canada and the U.S. if the trains don't resume running soon. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Thoughts of the child you were carrying keep pouring over in your mind. A deep, unrelenting sadness overshadows your days, and you wonder if you will ever feel whole again. There is hope and healing from a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline, 866-482-LIFE, and talk with someone who has been where you are. Your call is confidential, and we will help you find healing. 866-482-LIFE.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the program. Ed Battagliano joining me. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
Fred Jackson.
Hi there, Tim.
And thank you for listening wherever you may be on this Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. Where's Brother Ray today, Ray Pritchard? He's off today, but
he's out preaching, I think.
Okay.
You know, he's got this preaching thing he does on the side, you know.
Somebody sent me a text that it was his 50th wedding anniversary. That's why I asked.
Yes.
I wanted to give a shout out.
Yes.
Okay.
His
Ray and Marlene.
50th anniversary today.
Wow. Should we call him?
They married on a Thursday. Huh?
Should we just call him right now and get him on the phone, surprise him?
Yeah. Can we do that?
Well,
we're looking at Brent Creeley, our producer. You don't want to do it now?
I'm just kidding. It's his 50th wedding anniversary. I don't think he wants to talk to us.
It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Well, it's all right.
You think dinner maybe later?
We don't have to.
Anyway,
we don't have to. We don't have to do that.
Congratulations.
Listen, I don't care if they're on a
Used to be
cruise. Let's break it up.
Yeah.
Let's
Oh, come on. He's out on his bike.
let's jump in there.
A lot of people
No,
don't
that's
know
fine.
Ed used to work for a telemarketing company before he
That's
came
right.
on staff with us here.
Wait, they
so-
should be sitting down to dinner
Yeah,
now.
now.
Call.
All right. All right, Fred, what do you have for us this morning here?
It is day 4, the final day of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. And one of the issues they've been talking about is crime. I was just watching some stats this morning. Since the Democrats arrived in town, there have been 26 shootings, I think, and 6 deaths in Chicago.
In Chicago?
In Chicago, yes. There is a bit of a joke by some Republicans out there that the vice president picked by Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, there's been questions about his military experience.
Right.
And I think it's J.D. Vance who has said that Tim Walz is getting his first taste of
being in combat.
Being in combat by going to Chicago. Anyway, speaking of Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, he is in the vice presidential spot for Kamala Harris. Anyway, he gave his speech last night. Last night was day 3. And it, as tradition goes at conventions, it's the vice president's spot. And to no one's surprise, that he used some of his time during his speech last night to go on the attack against Donald Trump. Cut number 1.
Some folks just don't understand what it takes to be a good neighbor. Take Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Their Project 2025 will make things much, much harder for people who are just trying to live their lives. They spent a lot of time pretending they know nothing about this. But look, I coached high school football long enough to know, and trust me on this, when somebody takes the time to draw up a playbook, they're going to use it. And we know if these guys get back in the White House, they'll start jacking up the costs on the middle class. They'll repeal the Affordable Care Act. They'll gut Social Security and Medicare. And they will ban abortion across this country, with or without Congress. Here's the thing. It's an agenda nobody asked for. It's an agenda that serves nobody except the richest and the most extreme amongst us.
So that was a little bit of Governor Walz's speech last night at the convention.
So he's a socialist and a self-avowed socialist and a liar.
Yes. Yeah.
None of that was true.
There were some untruths mixed in there.
I just immediately fact-checked it.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you, Fox and Friends this morning played a clip of that speech. And then they had former President Donald Trump on. And he was asked right away. There's been a lot of controversy about this Project 2025. The Democrats have said that Trump is using that as a platform for his campaign. He has denied it. And this morning, once again, he made it very clear that the 2025 project is not the platform of his campaign. Cut number 2.
For him to say about Project 25 is disgraceful. They know I have nothing to do with it. I had no idea what it was. A group of people got together. They drew up some conservative values, very conservative values, and in some case, perhaps they went over the line, perhaps they didn't. I have no idea what Project 25 is, but they use it and they know it. Just like Charlottesville, totally discredited. They use Charlottesville. You know, Biden gets up all the time, says Charlottesville. He ran because of Charlottesville. He got run out of office by the Democrats. They did a coup.
Also, during this interview on Fox and Friends this morning, Trump addressed something else that Walz said. Walz said if Republicans were elected, there would be a ban on abortion, national ban on abortion across the country. And Trump pointed out once again that he fully agrees with what the United States Supreme Court ruled when it brought down the abortion law that was brought into place many years ago. He said he's leaving it up to the states. In fact, Trump this morning made mention the fact that even a state like Ohio now has a more open abortion approach than it did before the decision. the Supreme Court decision. So the interview with Trump went on for about 35 minutes. There were times when his responses went about 8 minutes, but he took advantage of that interview this morning to refute some of what was.
Well, and a lot of people may not know anything about Project 2025. It's a fairly recent project. And by the way, folks, you can find out more about it at project2025.org. And I think primarily this was a project driven by the Heritage Foundation. Other groups gave their opinions on some of this. But the left considers, I'm going to read what Project 2025 is calling for.
Okay.
And to our listeners, just briefly, and because the Democrats are calling this extreme. So let's see if this is extreme. Secure the border, finish building the wall, and deport illegal aliens. Doesn't sound extreme to me. De-weaponize the federal government by increasing accountability and oversight of the FBI and DOJ. Doesn't sound extreme to me. Unleash American energy production to reduce energy prices. Cut the growth of government spending to reduce inflation. Make federal bureaucrats more accountable to the democratically elected president and Congress. Improve education by moving control and funding of education from D.C., the District of Columbia bureaucrats, directly to parents and state and local governments, and ban biological males from competing in women's sports. If the Democratic Party thinks that's extreme, it only proves how extreme they are.
Yes.
Well,
and
I'll say this, too, about that. President Trump should not be dissing that.
Well, you're right.
Now,
but it's not his playbook.
It's
that
not,
was the accusation.
It's not his playbook. And he hadn't. But he's like running scared of it or something like that. And I don't think he should. He should not accept the premise of the Democrats that this is an extremist document.
Yes,
what I'm saying. I haven't read the whole thing. I do know people that have been associated with putting that together. That agenda, that Project
2025.
2025. I just don't think. I think President Trump should handle it this way. He should say, "Listen, Project 2025 is just one of the many whatever plans that people have. Should we, the Trump administration, get back into office, I'll look at many different plans.
Right.
And I'll consider many different ideas. We have our own agenda, which you can find at whatever his website is that has his particular campaign agenda. But I just know, talking to a lot of conservatives who've worked hard on this Project 2025, they feel like he's throwing them under the bus, and it's unnecessary. I'm just telling you the way.
Yeah, I think President Trump actually agrees with all the things I just read.
Yes.
I do understand, though, you believe him that he did not know what this was when he was first accused of promoting it by the left. So I can understand him saying, listen, I don't want to lock myself into defending something my team didn't develop.
Yeah, I understand that.
But you're right.
He knows about this, though.
Yeah, well, he does now.
Well, he's known about it before.
I don't know. He just said he did.
Well, then how do you reject it?
Well, I think he's rejecting the accusation that he...
Play it again. Play his response. Listen to what he says.
For him to say about Project 25 is disgraceful. They know I have nothing to do with it. I had no idea what it was. A group of people got together. They drew up some conservative values, very conservative values, and in some case, perhaps they went over the line, perhaps they didn't. I have no idea what Project 25 is, but they use it and they know it. Just like Charlottesville, totally discredited. They use Charlottesville. You know, Biden gets up all the time, says Charlottesville. He ran because of Charlottesville.
What I'm saying is, don't equate Project 2025 with the Charlottesville hoax.
I think what he's saying is not
okay.
I think what he's saying is I'm being accused of things that aren't true. And he did say that.
I'm just telling you. We'll move on here. I'm just telling you how people who worked hard on this document, who are conservative activists who've supported President Trump, feel about him saying the things that he's saying about Project 2025. Because on one hand he says I don't know what it is, and then on the other hand he says it has very conservative values.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So anyway, it's small potatoes, but I'm just.
I don't know, and I would guess that most of our listeners support everything that this Project 2025
well,
says.
President Trump should read it.
Yeah.
He should read it.
And he's probably, his policies are probably right in line with this.
These are a lot of people who were worked in his administration.
Yeah.
In the first administration.
And the Heritage Foundation is not a radical right group.
No.
They're a conservative group, but everything that they are recommending in Project 2025 is going to make our country better.
Yes.
And if President Trump's team would read it, then it wouldn't hurt to say, listen, I didn't design it, so it's not my job to defend it, but I like these things.
Yeah. All right, next topic, Fred.
Well, Tim Walz in his speech last night talked about extremism. Well, Walz, who is the governor of Minnesota, as we mentioned, a lot of people are digging into his background. Much has been reported on his 30-plus trips to China, the fact that he spent his honeymoon in China. And so they've made...
Communist China.
Communist China. So they made that connection. But here is a story that came out yesterday. Actually, it was an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal written by Catherine Kirsten. And Catherine Kirsten is a senior policy fellow at the Center for of the American Experiment. And what she is addressing is a new curriculum. And Governor Walz signed it into law. It's a new curriculum that's going to be introduced into all 500 public schools in Minnesota. And it's under the heading of the heading of Liberated Ethnic Studies Requirements. All right? I want to read to you a little bit about what this is going to do to students. The department's standards and benchmarks approved in January require first graders. Now, if you're in first grade, you're 5 or 6 years old, roughly?
Yeah.
Yeah. Requires first graders to, quote, identify examples of ethnicity, equality, liberation, and systems of power, and use those examples to construct meanings for those terms. Fourth graders in Minnesota must, quote, identify the processes and impacts of colonization and examine how discrimination and the oppression of various racial and ethnic groups have produced resistance movements, end quote. High school students are told to, quote, develop an analysis of racial capitalism and, quote, anti-blackness, and are taught to view themselves as members of racialized hierarchies based on, quote, dominant European beauty standards, end quote. Now, according to this opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal, the Walz administration relied on committed political activists to design and guide implementation of the state's education agenda. One of them is Brian Lozinski, an associate professor of urban and multicultural education at Madagascar College in St. Paul, and leader and a founding organizer of a group called Education for Liberation Minnesota. A group, according to this piece, that aims to be a political force in Minnesota. Mr. Lozinski's ideological commitments were on display in a 2022 article about the George Floyd riots titled, "The Black Radical Tradition Can Help Us Imagine a More Just World." The riots, he wrote, were mass uprisings against racialized state violence, which portend the inevitable death of the American social order that prioritizes vulgar economics. I could go on here. Mr. Lozinski urged schools reopening after COVID to join the social unrest and actively combat the great public health crisis of systemic racism. It goes on and on. Basically, this is Marxist indoctrination, now the law of the land in Minnesota, starting as young as first graders in that state.
This is frightening. This is absolutely a frightening development in the home state of the vice presidential candidate.
Yes.
Okay, for the Democratic Party ticket. This guy you read, this group, Education. What was it?
Education for Liberation, Minnesota.
It's part of a network of groups across the country. Okay, I'm at their website. The goal of EdLib Minnesota, Education for Liberation Minnesota, is to be a political force in the state of Minnesota to contend with the status quo of colonial education. All right, so this guy who designed this for children in Minnesota is part of a radical leftist group that is pushing a particular political view. I mean, if liberals in Minnesota say, well, we got no problem with that, then I would, because kids need to know, I would ask them, so you'd be okay if the Heritage Foundation, which with Project 2025, was designing the education curriculum for the kids in your state.
Yeah.
You think they would be fair-handed and even-handed?
Yeah.
This is a takeover of the education system in America, starting with these blue states. But this stuff is coming down the pike for your kids, no matter what state you live in.
What's the goal, you think, of in this case, the Minnesota education? And of course, they elected Tim Walz as the governor, who's basically, he's proud of his socialistic.
He just thinks being a socialist is being a good neighbor. That's what he said.
Right. But what do you think the goal is? I mean, just indoctrinating children at an early age to accept a communistic worldview?
It is to indoctrinate, perfect word, indoctrinate children at the earliest age, first grade, to raise up generations of radicals. My opinion is to overthrow the republic. Okay, to completely alter and institute a Venezuela-type revolution to make this country, quote-unquote, equitable. And you've got to have ground troops, and that's what they're doing. We all watch these videos on college campuses, Charlie Kirk or this one or that conservative on there, having conversations. I watched one yesterday at lunch, and these college kids are completely steeped in this revolutionary ideology, and now they're starting even as young as first grade in Minnesota. And Fred, this starts this year.
Yes.
This fall. 2024.
This is similar to the critical race theory.
Yes.
Right. Some of the same agenda items.
Yes.
Yes.
Oppressed versus the oppressor.
Right.
That's where they're going with this.
Yeah, and if you're white, you're part of the racist, oppressive class, and we're gonna. Their ideology is we are going to scrape that all off and flip the script.
Well, that's going to create a real problem in Minnesota because they're one of the whitest states in the country. They got the Somalis there.
Yeah.
That President Obama imported, but in the greater Minneapolis area. But other than that, they look like you and me, Ed.
Yeah.
Most people, and they're gonna have. What I'm saying is, if all of them are the oppressors, they're gonna have a hard time.
You ever see those they're not videos, but maybe they're videos now. But the monks that used to they would have during these feasts, they would walk down the roadway whipping themselves.
Yeah.
With the scourge because trying to rid themselves of their sinful nature. That's what liberal white people do. They hate themselves because they're white. And
I read that curriculum for Minnesota. That's in the 5th grade when they do that.
Oh, when they whip themselves?
Yes,
yeah.
For being white.
Yeah.
But you mentioned about most of the kids probably are white, but the goal of this is to make these white kids feel guilty first. You're part of the problem, but the step 2 is, but you can be part of the solution if you go along with us.
Mm-hmm.
And the solution is accept Marxism.
Mm-hmm.
That capitalism is evil.
Right.
And that we must bring in Marxism, socialism, communism to even the playing field for, this is what they say. But listen, if I was a parent in Minnesota and I knew that my first grader, and little first graders, they're just going to accept everything that the teacher says.
Right.
They're not going to question this at all. 4th graders probably aren't going to question it. but they're just going to be indoctrinated into this. And let's be honest, this curriculum isn't the first one in the country. Maybe it's the first formal curriculum, but it's not the first time Marxism has been taught in our schools.
Right.
We know that. Demonstration of what I'm saying is all the protesters against Israel in the streets.
Well, listen, some people may say, well, that's Minnesota. I could see if this is California, because California really drives a lot of the textbooks that will be used across the country because it's so big. But remember, this Minnesota is the home state of the man who could become vice president.
Yes.
This is a man who loves socialism. When he was in Congress, he was to the left of Bernie Sanders. He was in charge of the drafting, as governor, the drafting of this approach to education. If the leftists win in November,
yes,
Tim Walz is going to be the vice president of the United States, not Minnesota. This is an approach that the education department
yes
is going to take. We're talking about the federal.
Yes.
In D.C.
Yes.
Right? Tim Walz was a social studies teacher before he moved into politics and up the ladder. This is coming for the entire nation. When we're concerned about Joe Biden's beliefs as vice president when he was running in 2020 on men in women's restrooms and changing areas and playing women's sports, we said, okay, well, that's Joe Biden. When he got into office, he instructed the education department for the entire country to push this.
That's right.
And that's what's going to happen.
Yes.
If Tim Walz is vice president.
Also, speaking, I know there's some people maybe listening, they wonder what is socialism and communism. These people look like these people at the Democratic Party look like fellow Americans who are just championing, the different ideas than the Republicans. But you have to. You kind of got to take them at their word. Will they be successful in that whole agenda? No, not necessarily, because you do have the Republican Party and some of the Democratic Party that don't like the radical nature of the socialistic ideas.
Right.
For example, basically Michelle Obama is pushing distribution of wealth.
Yes.
Yesterday, she's saying some people take more than they need.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm paraphrasing here, but that's almost a verbatim quote. Well, listen to that. Take more. You know what I'm saying? Take. In other words, they've done something unethical to achieve the success.
They're bad guys.
Yeah. Capitalism. That's what they're saying.
Right.
We'll be back momentarily.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
The wording on the front of the magazine advertising church furniture told more of the church than many people are aware of. It read, "Your invitation to worship in comfort." Is this not the invitation that the church has been giving for the past couple of decades? Come, worship in comfort. For many years now, many of our churches have been telling people this. We've lifted up the reasons why they should attend our church. And among the reasons we have listed are what any good movie advertiser would list. Our church is air-conditioned, our preacher is entertaining and amusing, our seats are soft, and our requirements are few. The net result is that nearly half of those individuals who have their name on the church roll never enter the church door. And of those who do give any support, it's left up to a small minority to tote the load. Our rolls have never been so bulging and our buildings so empty, but at least we have worshiped in comfort. It seems like I remember somewhere in the sacred book some words from the Nazarene about a cross. It's been so long since I've heard it lifted up as a way of life that I sometimes think that perhaps cross-bearing has gone out of style, if indeed it was ever in. In many churches, it's easier to get into membership than it is to get into the local civic club. And it's harder to get out of membership than it is to get out of most jails. It really is. In some churches today, it's a good day if the crowd is large and the offering high. And the successful preacher is the one who serves the largest church and makes the largest salary. To keep the thing consistent, the going church of today is the one which can lay claim to the most people with the most means. Sacrifice is somewhat out of place today. Security has taken its place. It seems nearly an insult to ask one to make a sacrifice of either time or money or talent. Your invitation to worship in comfort. That's the matter with the church today. We have toned it down, done away with as much of the unpleasant requirements as possible, divided all we could down to the lowest common denominator. The net result is that we find something which smacks of religion, but denies the power of it. Don't dare stick your neck out to suggest that we get the church rolled into something that appears a halfway honest condition, because you're seeking trouble, my friend. I mean, after all, just because one hasn't been inside in 20 years, given a penny, or uttered a single prayer for the church, is no reason they shouldn't be a member. The Galilean didn't call us to success. He didn't call us to build bigger buildings, fill the roll book, or water down the invitation. He called us to offer the cross, to be faithful, to issue the plea to those who would respond, and to go on loving those who did not. That's still our task, and the hard part hasn't been removed. One observation most casual observers can make about the church and its invitation to comfort. The churches are half empty, but the courts are full. Maybe we need to forget the comfort and extend the cross.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Jeremiah 29:13.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Welcome back to today's issues on American Family Radio. Tim, Ed, and Fred, and we thank you for listening. One of our, the most popular podcast we have on right now on afr.net is Sandy Rios 24/7. And we like to have Sandy on live radio here every once in a while to talk about what's going on. And she joins us now. Good morning, Sandy.
Good morning, Tim and everybody.
The podcast is really doing well. You want to give people an overview maybe of what you're doing there and how people can download it?
Sure. Well, I'm really engaging in the daily news right now because I feel like I need to. I do a lot of interviews with very interesting people about the daily news, but lately I've really been covering what's actually happening. I just did a show that'll air today probably, or tomorrow, on abortion, the emphasis of abortion at the convention. It's just shocking, really, mind-boggling. But I had Gordon Chang on this week. It hasn't aired yet, but Gordon's talking about the danger that we face, the dangers that we face, both globally and within the country. And it's just things like that, Tim. They just, it goes on and on. It's we have good, I think look, I'm giving it my best. That's all I can say. Well. And they can find it on any podcast platform, but of course, AFR.net, AmericanFamilyRadio.net is our home base. But they can go to Spotify or Amazon or anything that, any podcast platform that they're accustomed to. Or my website, sandyrios.com, is very simple. You go there and you can click a button and it's on.
Sandy, Fred here.
Hi, Fred.
What does it say that one of the two national public parties is willing to put basically an abortion clinic on the site of its convention?
Fred, I honestly think we are actually feeling the flames of hell. I've never seen anything like it. In all my years of fighting this, I've never seen anything so horrible. And I've had tastes of it, touches of it through the many years. But they say they're full up, they're busy, they're performing abortions inside that trailer. They've got this giant inflatable IUD that they call Frida. That's marking, right outside their business there. And then they're doing, of course, vasectomies for men. And it reminds me, Fred, of, J.D. Vance said, he took a lot of heat a couple of weeks ago for saying that the Democrats are the party of childless cat women. And he really got a lot of blowback. But honestly, what are we talking about here? If we're encouraging abortion and then we're also encouraging men to have vasectomies, what is that but childless? What is that but encouraging not having or doing away with children? It's just wicked. It's so perverse, it's hard to find the words. And then you probably saw they did a march downtown where girls dressed up like the abortion pill. There's two pills, one that kills the baby and one that expels it. And you can do it in the the comfort of your own home, in your bathroom. You can have an abortion all by yourself, kill your own baby. And they dressed up like the mifepristone and mifepristol. They have similar names. And they're marching and they're making jokes and they're laughing. There's drums banging. This is so wicked, Fred. This is so wicked. My breath is taken away, truly, by the boldness of their wickedness.
Sandy, what do they have against children?
What they have against is God. Whatever God loves, they hate. And even if they don't know it, Fred, they're serving the prince of this world, Satan himself, Lucifer. That is their God. That is their king. And they do look. The whole issue of gender and transition is an attack, a direct attack on creation. The very beginning, the foundation of everything, male, female, created he, them. It's all an attack. Before that, homosexuality was the first beginning of that. But now we're into cutting parts off of girls and boys to make them into the opposite gender. It really is an attack. I don't think God, I just can't imagine that God's going to allow this to go on much longer.
Sandy, Ed here. You go all the way back to, I remember reading, we have some copies of Planned Parenthood founder
Margaret Sanger.
Margaret Sanger, thank you. And I remember reading some of her books. This goes back 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Copies from the 20s, I think it was, maybe even the teens, stuff that she wrote. And, sometimes people can ask the right questions and get the wrong answers. And what she did is she went into inner cities, and there was, in some of these big inner cities in the 20s, there was a lot of poverty, a lot of suffering, and her opinion, her answer that she got in how do we deal with poverty and overcrowding in the inner cities was kill babies. We need fewer children.
Did she say it like that?
Yes. Well, she said these women don't need to have any more babies. She even said more wicked things than that. She talked about black children as being like weeds, okay? And her solution to this was fewer children. And that's why she demanded a birth control approach, which eventually became the birth control pill. But abortion becomes the answer that she came up with. And so Planned Parenthood, I think, is the one that had this mobile van. Even the vasectomies, this mobile van was not offering free surgeries for men for carpal tunnel syndrome. It was vasectomies because they're encouraging men to save the planet by getting a vasectomy so they don't have children. This is making children the enemy of humanity, and that's what you see. And it is absolutely demonic, but it goes right back to Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood. She got this demonic idea in her head that fewer children was the answer.
Actually, if just to add to that, the quote was basically that black children were human weeds that needed to be exterminated. And so it was in the minority communities that they planted these clinics early on.
Right.
And still, Planned Parenthood has the audacity to have Margaret Sanger still listed on their website as their founder. So
Margaret Sanger, she got black preachers in the inner cities to push Planned Parenthood ideology because she told them, you will decrease the amount of suffering for your people in the inner cities by killing babies.
Well, of course, the here's the thing, Ed. Many men, are cheerleading abortion. And what the feminists haven't quite made out yet is that it's the men who really benefit from this. And I'm not a feminist. I'm just telling you. It doesn't cost them anything, or they pay for an abortion, but physically they go through nothing. It's a get out of jail free card for promiscuity and having lots of women. And so naturally, a lot of these men are cheerleaders for this, but it's the women who have to go through it. When I was watching the night that these three different entities told their couple, and then a young, beautiful black woman and a young, beautiful black girl tell their stories about abortion. I was watching the crowd as the applause came, and I'd like to say something about those three testimonies, but as the applause came, the cameras focused on a lot of women, and you know what I saw? Because I've seen this before. I saw such deep sorrow, such woundedness in the women's eyes who they panned on. And I know, Ed, I know why that is, because the wound that abortion leaves in women is, it either makes them depressed and sad, or it makes them angry. I've said angry and bitter. That's why so many women, that's I believe this is true, that women my age and younger now are angry and bitter because of abortion. And they cling to it because if abortion is ever declared illegal, they then will have to come to grips. They think being legal makes it moral.
Yes.
And if we ever make it illegal, then they will have to take the responsibility for what they've done. But
that's
just
really powerful.
Just a practical caution. Those three stories were very, well, at surface level, were very compelling. And the message I'd want to send to people listening today is that you have to listen carefully. You cannot be in the Christian conservative bubble and just say, oh, but abortion's wrong and we have the right to life. No, cliches will not work in this culture. You have to really think through this issue in order to make your case. Because I can't go into all of this, I'm sure, for time's sake, but the first couple, it's such a vague story about how their baby was almost at term and they were told that the baby couldn't be delivered alive. And so they never make it clear why. So then they want an abortion? And so she must have gone through an abortion. So that means they had to do something very brutal to their baby, Amanda. And that baby could have been delivered in a different way, but they make it sound like because she couldn't have an abortion, but she was at 9 months as far as I understand it. And then we have the second girl, the black girl, who went into a miscarriage, and she started bleeding and cramping and how horrible that was. But she thought the solution was an abortion. Well, women have had miscarriages since the fall of man, in the garden. Right. I'm sure abortions have been, miscarriages. It happens. That's what the abortion pill does. It takes you into cramps and bleeding, and you have the privilege of killing your baby in your own home. This is so illogical. And the last one I should address, that's the 13-year-old girl who was raped by her stepfather. That's the most sympathetic one. And the thing I would like to say is it better for that girl to have gone through an abortion and face all of the regret and bitterness and sorrow in the future, or if she had carried it to term and she could have seen that baby, would that not have brought healing? And if she had given that baby to some couple that would have raised it, would that not have brought healing and redemption? I maintain that it would.
All right, you're listening to Today's Issues. Our guest is Sandy Rios, and we're talking about what some of the comments and statements and video from the National Democrat Convention tonight. Kamala Harris, the nominee, will speak, and that'll get a lot of attention, I'm sure. Last night, Oprah Winfrey made her appearance. Oprah Winfrey is one of the most, still remains, if you poll Americans, one of the most popular public figures out there. And so to have her on stage was a big coup for the. Sorry about that pun there.
Yeah.
Already had a coup a few weeks ago, but anyway, it was a big get for the. Not that Oprah Winfrey hadn't always been Democrat, but
Right.
she's to get. I didn't watch the speech, but she for her presence to be there and her endorsement of Kamala Harris. I think that's a pretty big deal.
It is. Yeah, I agree.
So because of her influence.
Tim,
Go
could I
ahead.
say something about
Go
that?
ahead, yes.
Well, first thing that she said, I'm trying to find the exact words. She basically said, that, here it is. She said, I always vote my values, and that is what is needed in this election now more than ever. I'm telling you the truth, that values and character matter most of all. Well, I don't know. I'll just, an aside. Oprah made a movie years ago, her first one. She wrote it, produced it, acted in it. It was called Beloved. Did any of you guys see this?
No, was that before or after The Color Purple?
Oh, it was before.
Okay.
And Beloved was the most vulgar, foul movie. I don't mean just vulgar. I couldn't sit through it. That's what came out of Oprah, and also Satanism, spirits, and all of this. It was just depraved. So that's Oprah's. That was her movie, her script, her acting. It was her baby. That's her values.
Well, I know if you listen to her in the past, the few times I've heard her talk about God, but she used to do that a lot on her. And she was raised in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, which is not too far from where we are. But she'll talk about God in a sort of a cosmic Santa Claus kind of way. You know what I'm saying?
Kind of new agey.
Yeah, kind of new agey. Not nothing about the need for, John 3:16 or anything centric to the Christian message. It was more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know,
I think she said there's many ways.
Yeah, all roads lead to God, sort of a mentality there, or a philosophy. There, one other thing I wanted to talk about, we're talking to Sandy Rios, is, and maybe you guys have something else, and Sandy doesn't know I'm going to bring this up, so I'm springing it on us all here, but I was reading from Michelle Obama's speech, and of course we talked about how she said that she grew up seeing people, some Americans take more than they needed, which only thing it's class warfare right there. Ironically, she's one of the she's worth $70 million or something like that. She and her husband now. I don't know if she took more than she needed. Doesn't seem to me like she.
Well, they're worth $70 million.
And four big homes, Hawaii, Martha's Vineyard. I mean, they're killing it. For socialists, they're doing really well. But she said this too, and this is a continuing theme from the far left, and that is the sort of the oppressed versus the oppressor. And she said, and this is midway through her talk on whenever it was that Tuesday night. She says, quote, and here at home as George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and a never-ending list of innocent people of color continue to be murdered, stating the simple fact that a Black Life Matters is still met with derision from the nation's highest office, end of quote. I don't know what she's talking about. Maybe she's talking about Trump there. But, Ed, do you want to comment on this? Is there a never-ending list of innocent people of color who are being murdered in America?
Well, if her point is that if that's the only point she's making, then yes, there is a long list of people of color being murdered. They're being murdered by other people of color in our inner cities, and the laws are getting even more lax in those inner cities. But when you start off by talking about George Floyd, then the implication is a never-ending list of people of color being murdered, in parentheses, by police officers. And that is patently untrue in this country. More white people are killed by cops every year than black people. I think the percentages are even higher, cops killing white people. And listen, our inner cities are a mess. Absolutely, I would agree. But they're all run by Democrats and have been run by Democrats for the last 50 years. So this becomes part of the narrative being created by the Democratic Party. And Sandy, we'll pitch it to you for your take. And that narrative is America is a systemically racist country run by evil white people.
Well, if you guys have heard the end of Oprah's speech, you would have heard what a racist she is. She was amazing. The words, I can't see them here, but basically, they're coming after us. But when we band together, we're going to win. And she's talking about her color, about her race. But here's the good thing. Here's the good thing. I'm seeing in my Twitter feed, my X feed, clip after clip after clip of Black Americans saying, we're not falling for this anymore. I just found one this morning where this girl says, they've been trying to tell us, every time we get discontented with the way things are going, they hang out a so-called black candidate because they think we'll vote for them just because they're black. I'm tired of that. I'm going to quit doing that. I'm not doing that anymore because we see what it is they're about. This is a big game. And many of them they say really terrible things about Kamala. And they love Trump. Many of them love Trump. I've seen, even they went into Barack Obama's neighborhood. And you should have heard the neighbors talking about how they like Trump. It's amazing. So things are changing in the country among Black Americans. They're beginning to understand. I just saw a clip from a Black, she owned a food truck, young girl, probably in her maybe early 40s. And she said she had worked for years to raise $25,000 to buy this food truck. And now she was having to sell it because it's such hard times. And a guy came up to buy the truck from her. He identified himself as an illegal immigrant, and he had all these papers that the government's going to give him the money, $25,000 to buy her food truck.
Oh my
and she
goodness.
she was in tears. She was in tears. So this is happening to Black Americans, and they're finally understanding this is not an issue of race.
Sandy, just had a quick question. Tim Walz gave his speech last night. We're learning a lot about him, his, 30-plus trips to China. He spent his honeymoon there. Communist China. There was a Wall Street Journal editorial yesterday about the new curriculum that he has approved as governor of Minnesota, which basically, starting in grade 1 in public schools, kids are going to be indoctrinated into Marxism.
Yes, that's, I mentioned this with you guys last time I talked, I think. Tim, actually, the Congress is doing an investigation into his connections to China right now. There are people that traveled with him that have reported that he is a true believer. He is a true believer in Maoist communism. In fact, he got married on the anniversary of Tiananmen Square, and that was the slaughter by the Red Chinese of the people holding up a Statue of Liberty in the face of tanks. He got married on that day. His wife said because he wanted to remember the day. So and I don't think he's as silly as he seems. He comes off across to me as silly, but I think he's actually very dangerous. And so I believe he's a true blue believing communist, and I think Kamala is too. I know I said that last time. It sounds outrageous, sounds wild, but it is true. What they are espousing is right out of the Marxist manifesto.
And it's a very strange interweaving of strands here. You have the communism / Marxism. You have the paganism, like Tim was talking about with Oprah Winfrey, and you have the green flags of the anti-Israel, pro-Hamas people, and then you have the sexual and gender radicals. I mean, those are three strands that, if you put them together, or if you consider the ideologies and how they relate to each other, Hamas doesn't. They throw homosexuals off buildings. Okay, ordinarily these would not be groups that would have a lot in common. They're not having picnics together. Okay, but in this country, those four strands are forming a very powerful movement that I think are just united in their hatred of God and their hatred of liberty and our Constitution. Is that unfair to say?
No, not at all. I just did a whole show on who these pro-Hamas protesters are. And they're actually a blend of Islamists, but most of them are communists. We're not hearing anything about that. I did a really long interview with a Muslim journalist, a female Muslim journalist who's a conservative. She's from Virginia. Her name just escapes me in this moment. But she's broken it down. She went there and she traced all of the groups that are paying for these protests. And in fact, I saw a video of all these U-Haul trucks lined up to bring supplies to these protesters. So we know that they're being supported by communist groups, but people can't even probably name a communist group that are listening because they're not talking about that. But this is a worldwide effort. It's and you know the old saying by the famous Asian, whatever his name was, The Art of War, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
That Sun Tzu.
Yeah. So they're joining together and bonding together in order to destroy us, and it's that we're watching it before our very eyes.
Sun Tzu. Thought that was like a cartoon.
It is that too.
Who are you quoting there?
It's an old Chinese military strategist.
Okay.
He wrote The Art of War, and
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
yeah,
Yes.
I think that was one of his.
So you're saying that these groups that are warring against America and our Constitution and Christianity come from different places themselves, but that's their agenda, is to take down that.
Yeah, they ordinarily would be enemies
Right.
against each other.
Right.
Like communist China trying to, imprisoning the Uyghur Muslims. Ordinarily, communism does not want any powerful religion within its borders, but they unite like the Pharisees and the Sadducees did to crucify
That's
Jesus.
true. It's good.
They unite to take down the United States because we're the last bulwark, true bulwark, against a globalist takeover.
Okay, Sandy, thanks so much. We encourage. Sandy has a podcast 3 days a week, and you want to get that and listen to that. She has a lot of great guests and also critical information there. You can download the podcast a lot of different places where you get podcasts. You all know those, but certainly AFR.net, AFR.net. You can go there and download Sandy's podcast 3 days a week. It'll show up to you, so you can listen 3 days a week on demand. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, guys. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
All right, same here.
Okay.
We'll take a time out. We'll be back in a minute. Stay with us.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Abraham Hamilton III.
If you really want to see the tides turning in our country, can I challenge you and encourage you? If the Lord could grab a hold of us in our family, you would see the tide in our politics turn.
The Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on American Family Radio.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. New U.S. ships have arrived in the Middle East. As no Gaza ceasefire deal has been reached, Alex Hogan reports in Tel Aviv, Israel.
The USS Abraham Lincoln has arrived in the Middle East today. It will replace the USS Theodore Roosevelt carrier strike group as Washington reaffirms that it will defend Israel from Iran and Iranian proxies. Last night, President Biden held a phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, stressing the urgency of accepting the current ceasefire proposal on the table. Senior officials and negotiators will meet in Cairo, Egypt this week. One major hurdle still in the way, the question of whether the IDF will remain at the Philadelphia corridor. That's the 9-mile stretch of land between Gaza and Egypt. In Tel Aviv, Israel, Alex Hogan, Fox News.
Vice President Kamala Harris is set to address Democrats during Night 4 of the DNC as she officially accepts their nomination for the White House. Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise weighed in.
Kamala tonight, I have no doubt, is going to lay out every grievance that every middle-class family has and say, I'm going to fix it all. The problem is she created a lot of those problems. The questions are going to start coming. You know, pretty soon the honeymoon ends, you leave Chicago, and you have to actually run a campaign and talk about real issues.
Former President Donald Trump campaigning in North Carolina yesterday and issuing a grim warning, saying that Vice President Harris is marching the U.S. to the brink of World War III. Jillian Turner has more from the State Department.
The Trump-Vance ticket yesterday devoted this entire day on the trail to attacking VP Harris's foreign policy platform and touting their own. It is worth noting that a new Trump doctrine is emerging fairly clearly this cycle, and it is this: no more fighting in foreign wars. Now, the signature Trump issues from his first term remain in place, forcing Europeans to pay their NATO dues, competing with China on the global market, and using the proverbial stick with Iran. Also, ironclad support for Israel.
A fresh reading on the job market is still not revealing much change.
The number of people filing for unemployment benefits for the first time rose by 4,000 last week to 232,000. The report suggests not much change in layoffs, and it was close to economists' predictions of 230,000. The number of those remaining on benefits stayed over 1.86 million. Though this week the Labor Department revised job growth for the year ending in March down to 2.1 million from the initial estimates of nearly 3 million jobs. That indicates job gains for last year and early this year were weaker than first reported. Ginny Cosola, Fox News.
More pro-life activists have been convicted of violating the FACE Act, this time in Michigan. Chris Woodward has more.
The FACE Act is from the 1990s and is also known as the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. Those convicted include Chester Gallagher. He's being represented by Thomas More Society, where Steve Crampton is an attorney.
They certainly engaged in conduct that resulted in the obstruction of an entrance to an abortion facility. To that extent, within the four corners of the FACE Act, they likely violated it. The problem comes with, in our view, the continued constitutionality of the FACE Act after the reversal of Roe against Wade in the Dobbs decision 2 years ago.
Thomas More Society believes that FACE was enacted for the sole purpose of protecting abortion because, at the time of its passage, courts had created what Crampton calls the illusion of a so-called constitutional right to abortion.
But Dobbs made very clear that abortion is not and never was a constitutional right. Therefore, in our view, FACE is unconstitutional. This lawsuit never should have been filed, and the untold hundreds of thousands of dollars of resources and time wasted on pursuing gentle Christians for acts that took place 4 years ago were a tragedy and a travesty and misuse of federal funds.
I'm Chris Woodward.
More news available online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Pugh.
What we believe about the Bible is based on what we believe about its source.
The God Who Speaks, the award-winning documentary from the American Family Association, is now available in a special limited edition DVD set. This release includes a Sunday school curriculum and 2 hours of additional footage. Go to thegodwhospeaks.org to get your copy today. thegodwhospeaks.org. Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues. I'm Tim with Ed, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl joins us. Good morning, Steve.
Morning, everybody.
How you doing?
I'm having to down some soda and a cookie. My blood sugar is going a little low, so I'm trying to avoid a coma in the studio.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, I thought you would.
So you regulate that with
sugar.
With sugar, okay.
Yeah, your blood sugar goes low, you eat sugar. Your blood sugar goes high, you stop eating sugar. Yeah.
Pretty simple formula.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about. Excuse me for yawning there. This show is not that boring. I don't know what happened there, but anyway,
when you got a yawn, there's no stopping it.
And it usually impacts everybody else around you, doesn't
that's
it?
right.
If you see somebody yawning, you start yawning too. And why does
I'm
that
trying
happen?
not to- I don't know, because I'm about to start yawning now. I wasn't looking at you when you were
Doesn't
yawning.
happen with sneezing. It just
No,
yawning.
I don't know. What there's probably some. I'm sure there's some psychological connection there.
Maybe your brain says,
What
I
is
could
the
use a
purpose
good
of
yawn
yawning?
myself.
What is the purpose, the biological purpose of yawning? Are you
Of letting people know to stop talking because they're boring.
That's a good point.
Yeah. This is really boring. Let's move on.
Let's move on.
No, some people
it's
say
saying
your
you're
brain needs oxygen or something.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know.
It's
Who
like
knows?
saying you're boring without saying you're boring.
Yes.
All right. So I wanted, before we jump into what Steve's going to start with, Steve, you were bringing this up at our show prep meeting this morning. President Trump spoke yesterday in public, outside. Right?
Yes.
But was that the first time since
first outside
attempted assassination?
That's correct. And he was standing behind some bulletproof glass in front behind him.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. I don't know why you wouldn't have done that, in the past, but certainly they're going to be doing that every time.
Well, I don't think a president's been in a convertible since JFK. So
Can I ask a question? Have they? Has there been any further progress on finding out why Thomas
Ask
Matthew
Wesley.
Crooks?
Is that where you're going with this?
I was just
the assassination
yes,
attempt.
The assassination attempt. It just dropped off the.
I just think there's so much news every day. It's just inevitably.
The conspiracy theorists among us, and I might count myself as one of these, says there's been some very strange goings on. The Thomas Crooks' body was given up to his family and cremated like a couple of weeks ago.
Very quick.
Very quickly.
Yep.
They say they can't get into his encrypted phone. You mean a 21-year-old or 20-year-old kid has stumped?
Well, no. Now I thought the same thing at first, but I talked to some people who are tech savvy, and they said what probably happened is he probably downloaded an app, third-party app, and some of those are extremely difficult to crack, even for government. So
Okay.
I'm not.
My last thing on this is there are just too many. It's impossible for even a government agency to be that incompetent.
No, I agree. Something's going on here. Listen, the amount of secrecy. I was watching a little video about. Remember the Las Vegas shooting?
Yeah.
Back in 2017.
Yep.
There's still stuff that nobody's telling us about why people. So I want to know why Thomas Crooks did this, and nobody's saying anything.
The only 20-year-old in the world without a social media footprint.
Yeah, I want to know, does this kid actually have encrypted bank accounts overseas? It's I don't know.
Tim, is that
but
why you
it's
brought this
dropped
up
off.
to talk about?
Well, no. Basically, I was talking about the bulletproof shielding.
Yeah.
It's clear
Yeah.
that the shielding I'm talking about, if that's what you call it, bulletproof. What do you call it? I call it shielding.
Like plexiglass.
Yeah,
or something.
yeah. But that he was surrounded. Well, not completely surrounded, but at least front and side he was covered yesterday, and I guess that'll be the norm going forward.
Is that an admission by the Secret Service that we just can't do our job correctly? We got to put
Well-
this guy behind bulletproof glass?
No, I don't think this necessarily says that. It's just another layer of protection that you would use, just like the Pope, does, the Pope Mobile.
Right.
And that happened after John Paul II was attempted assassination.
Right.
So every
Right.
time something like that happens, again, the convertible, no president's been in a convertible since John Kennedy was assassinated. They improve, I think.
Well, I think the world changed after JFK was assassinated in terms of presidents being exposed to the public, because you look back at that now and you go, how in the world?
Well, that's what we're going to be saying about Butler, Pennsylvania in 20 years.
Yeah, but it wasn't uncommon. I'm talking about prior to JFK's assassination for presidents to be exposed publicly.
Back in the day, the White House, someone could walk up to the White House, knock on the door, and talk to the president. I'm talking about Buchanan and
back in the 1800s,
early 1800s. Yeah,
yeah, it was a different world. Well, you see how the John Wilkes Booth got into the Lincoln excuse me, to the Ford Theater to assassinate.
To the president's box where he's watching.
Got all the way up to the president's box. So
Yeah.
the security must not have been that tight.
Well, I think
according to the movie, the guy was having a drink at the bar next door.
Oh, is that right?
That's several movies. Yeah, that's one of the assertions is.
Anyway, I was just asking if there's been anything new. I just have not heard anything. It's just dropped off the screen.
The guy that I listen to that is seemingly the most plugged in is the name just escaped me. Let me look. He's a former Secret Service agent. He's got a lot of Dan Bongino, got a lot of sources in there. Now, I will say that often sometimes when he gets excited, his show uses some very coarse language.
Right.
So I'm not recommending you listen to it or you send your kids there for the latest. But he is very well informed, and as he says, always what he says seems to be true, and he usually gets it out about 2 weeks before the regular media does.
Yeah.
All right, next topic.
All right. The name Robbie Starbuck has been come across the news quite a bit lately, and it started with when it was John Deere was one of the first. He's going
Tractor
after
Supply, wasn't it?
Well,
was that?
I think it was after.
Okay.
Anyway, he's finding companies that are being woke, and companies. What he's targeting is companies whose customers likely don't agree with the woke. So, in the case of Tractor Supply, where they were putting their data into the corporate index of the gay
corporate
lobby.
equality index,
yeah,
the human rights campaign,
and people who buy tractors and farm equipment and everything generally are not they're not that woke. And
right.
So he has targeted several companies, and the latest one is Jack Daniels, the bourbon maker in Kentucky.
Because Harley Davidson has flipped now as well.
Harley Davidson, Sturgis is the in what state is it?
Is it Missouri?
No,
South Dakota.
South Dakota is one of the largest motorcycle gatherings of the year. It's Harley Davidson and the bikers and the Hells Angels and all these people get together. It's not a family-friendly event, but all the bike companies go there because they want their customers there.
Right.
The Harley Davidson tent was almost empty. And a lot of because Robbie Starbuck had pointed some stuff out, so they did make some changes. But this is what Jack Daniels is going to be doing. They are ending their participation in HRC's Corporate Equality Index. They're going to have their employees and executive bonuses and compensation goals tied to business performance, not to DEI. They're going to end quantitative workforce and supplier diversity ambitions, and they're going to cut woke trainings.
So are you recommending that I stop boycotting Jack Daniels because I don't drink it? So
you can still here's what you can do. In celebration of this, why don't you have a Jack and Coke, a virgin Jack and Coke?
All right.
Jack Daniels and Coke without the Jack Daniels.
What's a Jack and Coke, a virgin Jack and Coke?
Okay,
how do you do that?
Jack, apparently one of the drinks that Jack Daniels is, you put Jack Daniels in some Coca-Cola here.
Yeah, that's still got alcohol though, right?
Well, yeah, it does. So what you do, but when you do a virgin drink, it's the drink without the virgin. So a virgin daiquiri would be all the ice and thing without the alcohol.
I was just kidding. You're giving me an actual recipe.
I thought you might not know.
I thought a virgin drink was a drink without alcohol.
It is. So what I'm saying, if you have a virgin Jack and Coke, it's just Coke.
Okay.
Right.
So have a Coke.
I understand. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure.
You could have a Coke and say
have a Coke.
And say it's a virgin Jack and Coke.
Yes.
Okay, then you can start teaching the world to sing. You know what I'm saying?
In perfect harmony.
In perfect harmony, that's right.
Go ahead, Steve.
All right. An interesting thing happened the other day at the convention. ABC has a booth there, and they were interviewing the Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo. Now, she's in charge of the economy and the climate here. You might remember yesterday we heard early in the morning that the federal government had to revise down the number of job creations by about 818,000. 200,000 jobs left.
Right.
The biggest reduction
Since
maybe ever.
2009.
Maybe since
right after the big bubble burst.
So it looks like the Biden administration was putting out a whole bunch of numbers that weren't accurate.
Right.
So they wanted to ask Gina Raimondo about this. Now, remember, this is the Commerce Secretary who's in charge of business and hiring and that kind of stuff in this country. Listen to what she said, Cut 11.
Donald Trump is already addressing this on the campaign trail. So let's take a listen to that one together.
The administration padded the numbers with an extra, listen to this one, 818,000 jobs that don't exist. So they said they existed, and they never did exist. They built them up so that they could say what a wonderful job they're doing.
So when you hear that, do you potentially think that this new numbers could be a liability for this campaign?
No, when I hear that, first of all, I don't believe it because I've never heard Donald Trump say anything truthful.
It is, though, from the Bureau of Labor.
I'm not familiar with that.
Isn't the Bureau of Labor under the Commerce Department?
I think it is, and yes, it is. And they were put out hours before this interview. She knew. I'm just
either that or she was having a non-virgin Jack and Coke or something, and just she was
all morning.
Is she a close friend of Karine Jean-Pierre's? Because that sounded like verbatim. They went to the same public relations school.
Yeah, she would refer you, Tim, to the to the Commerce Department. Right. Oh, that's right. I'm over the Commerce Department.
That's what Karine Jean-Pierre is known for, is referring when she has a question she doesn't want to answer that buttonholes her on an issue related to Biden or Harris. She's a press spokesperson for those who don't know.
Honor related,
and she will say, I don't have all the information on that. I will refer you to, and then she gives you a 3-letter agency, which if you call over there, you get put on hold and listen to elevator music.
Yes, that's
so
right.
you never get an answer. Now, Jen Psaki, the former press secretary for Biden in the first year or so, she was known for circle back.
Yeah, I'll circle back to you.
Right, which is another non-answer. Circle back means I'm not going to. I'll circle back is intended to say I'll get that information and get back to you.
Yeah, but it won't be publicly.
Won't be publicly, and I may never because I've got to circle back again tomorrow.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so she was well known for that. And then Karine Jean-Pierre has her own, signature answer, and that is I will refer you to.
Yes.
And also she says, I want to be very clear. Yeah. I want to be very clear, and then she goes ahead and muddies up everything.
Yes, that's right.
Kamala Harris has her own things in terms of, for example, I can hear the call from Jen Psaki when she's circling back. Hello, reporter. I told you never to ask me those questions.
Not in public.
Not in public. By the way, just on that 818,000 job revision, the Commerce Department released that in the middle of the Democrat National Convention. Now, why? I've been hearing this. The Biden administration has been jacking up the numbers. They've been reporting numbers to make their economy look really good. That's one thing they have been bragging about is the economy. Well, now they're getting up to an election. Inflation is kind of taking over, and these numbers will spark the Fed into lowering interest rates sooner, which will infuse some more cash into the economy, which will make us artificially look like we're healthier than we are because, there's an election coming up.
Right. No, I'm not saying the Republicans don't do the same thing. You certainly, this close to an election, you certainly don't want information coming out that pops the balloon you've blown up to pretend like things are going well.
Unless
when
there's
they're
good
not.
reason to pop it, which I think in this case I'm hearing there may be.
Yep.
The rumor is we're going to hear from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. tomorrow. He said he's going to be making a speech in Arizona and Phoenix. Just so happens that President Trump is going to be in Glendale, which is a suburb of Phoenix, tomorrow night. And according to NBC News, they say they have confirmed through 2 independent sources that Robert F. Kennedy is going to end his presidential campaign and endorse Donald Trump. His voters, they say he was taking, as a third-party candidate, more votes away from Donald Trump than he was from Kamala Harris. So he's going to join the Trump train. What do you think?
This is one of those things that could shake up the race. Not having a third-party candidate in the mix, and I guess nobody would know at the beginning. I mean, before the election, how much of an impact he could have. I always thought that third-party candidates can, even if they only get 1% of the vote, can turn elections. I think the Green Party, for example, may have given the 2000 election to George W. Bush, taking enough votes away from Al Gore in Florida in 2000 to turn the election. And so some people argue the same thing about the 2016 election. So to have someone like RFK Jr. endorse Trump, now, as far as I know, RFK Jr. would be doing this not because he's necessarily all in on everything that Trump is promising to do, but because RFK Jr. And his running mate, Nicole Shanahan, I think, are so disappointed in the Democratic Party. They do not want Harris Walz to win. So
Tim,
we'll see.
The word is that he's going to be getting some kind of a position in the Trump administration for this. That's the rumor out there. I don't know if it's true, but if so, where do you think he'd go?
We're talking about RFK Jr.
RFK Jr.
Yeah, if he endorses Trump, and then if Trump wins, does he get maybe a cabinet level position? Because that would be the only thing he would accept. What maybe Surgeon General?
Yeah, or
he's
head
not
of
a
the
doctor.
Health and Human Services.
Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would over health. And
He's an attorney. So
yeah, well,
he's sued big pharmaceutical companies. He'd probably go after them.
Yeah.
Or head of CIA. Because he has said, I don't know if I said.
What does he
this on
do
the air.
first day? Walk in and I want to know who killed my uncle.
Well, he says he believes it was the CIA.
He said that out loud
on the Joe Rogan podcast I listened to. Anyway,
I don't know. He if RFK Jr. does endorse Trump, drop out and endorse Trump, then and that is in return for a maybe it's unsaid or unspoken, but and maybe they haven't. Maybe they haven't. Maybe that's not in terms of any kind of agreement. But he is offered a job. It would have to be something substantial, I think, for him to take it and go to work, so to speak, for the federal government. But
just like Vivek Ramaswamy would be great, putting him in charge of draining the swamp. Somebody like that, who, in other words, who has a vision and a passion for
Would that
doing
be
that change.
infrastructure drains?
Well, I think Trump probably should tell Vivek, if Trump wins and Vivek Ramaswamy is available, Trump would probably do well to say, hey, I'm giving you the position I used to have at my show, and that is you're to go around and tell people you're fired.
You're fired.
And Vivek Ramaswamy would probably fire all the he'd find all the deep state folks that he could and fire them all.
So he'd be Secretary of Apprentice,
so to speak.
He would and he would do it with great energy. That guy looks like he's got unlimited energy.
All right, next story, Steve.
All right, let's go across the pond a little bit. In England, there was a British woman who was arrested. Her name is Isabel Von Spruce. She was standing outside of an abortion clinic in Birmingham,
Across the street, right?
Across the street, silently praying, head bowed, silently praying. The police walked up to her and said, "What are you doing?" "I'm praying." "You can't do that here," and they arrested her. Well, she has won in a court case. She has received £13,000. That's about $17,000. And the lawyers, and by the way, this was Alliance Defending Freedom UK that took the case, saying it's an admission that they never should have made that arrest.
Not in a country that's supposed to be free.
What do you charge her with?
I think they charged her with violating public space protection order.
Listen,
it's kind of that's about the Vegas.
It would be like the FACE
Vegas
Act.
law I've ever heard of.
It's their version of the FACE Act.
Okay.
It's all about protecting abortion.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's good news.
Yeah.
Right.
Good. Yeah, good for her. It's not much of a payday though.
$17,000.
Yeah.
She's head of the UK March for Life, so I'm sure that a lot of that money is going to be going into UK March for Life. So, all right. Are
we out of stories?
No, I got more.
You got tons of stories.
Okay, go.
All right. Let's talk about there's a new Chick-fil-A they got, and they're building it. It's in the Atlanta area.
By the way, that's where Chick-fil-A started.
It is
in Atlanta.
And it's a 2-story building. There are no dine-in seats. It is 4 drive-through lanes. And they have a new technology where every 6 seconds they can deliver food from upstairs in the kitchen to downstairs in the drive-through lanes. And they have
every 6 seconds.
Every 6 seconds.
Wow.
And so they are. It's a elevated drive-through restaurant. It's a sophisticated conveyor belt system that streamlines food delivery by quickly moving the meal from the elevated kitchen above the team member on the ground below. It can bring food down every 6 seconds. So,
do they deliver that food with pleasure?
It's their pleasure to deliver the food.
They always
good one,
say,
Ed.
My
Indeed
pleasure.
It is.
Good one. Huh?
My pleasure.
I think they're already very fast.
Yeah.
They've got it down to science. If you've ever been, they have 2 drive-throughs, and they got team members out there taking your order, and it does.
And they are very good at getting because they'll have multiple lanes.
Yep.
And then by the time you get up to the window, because you've already paid, they're pretty good at making sure your order is the one they hand out the window.
Yeah, yeah. And they have waffle fries.
Their waffle fries
I
are
tell you,
worth it.
This is a true story. My little dog, which is a Maltese,
Champ.
Champ. He knows when Alice and I eat on the patio. He knows when I bring home Chick-fil-A.
As opposed to McDonald's?
Yeah. I don't bring home McDonald's much, but if I bring home Olive Garden or
so there's a particular
way it smells. There's something that triggers him.
Yeah.
About the aroma of the Chick-fil-A bag.
Do you share your food with?
Well, I did make the mistake one time.
Yeah.
I think
that's all mistakes.
I know.
That's a sign you have a born-again dog.
Gave him a waffle fry one time, and now,
Listen,
now
it's bad
like,
enough that you have to share your food with your wife. Now you got to share it with your dog.
But I'm talking about it's harassment. I'll take a video of it next time.
Yeah.
It's when we start eating on the patio, normally he doesn't care.
Oh, if you go somewhere else.
If it's anything else but Chick-fil-A, he doesn't bother us. He doesn't care. But Chick-fil-A bag, he knows it's there, and he starts his.
I want to see a video. That's hilarious.
Pawing at my leg.
Yeah.
And barking at me.
And now, is it just one and done, or is it comes back for seconds?
Well, we'll talk about it tomorrow.
All right.
You know, there are many ways we can impact the world around us. Some are more